Good afternoon. Today we will be discussing the sensory modality story, and it actually starts off with vision. First, vision is stimulated by a small electromagnetic spectrum of visible light, which is between 400 and 700 nanometers. The light first enters through the cornea, then goes to the pupil, and then to the iris and into the ciliary muscle, which opens and closes the lens, and then it moves all the way to the back of the eyeball and hits the retina. Now, the retina has five separate layers. The first layer are your photoreceptors, which are your rods cones, and then it travels to your horizontal cells, your bipolar cells, your endocrine cells, until it reaches the axons of the retinal ganglion cells over here. The retinal ganglion cells are on the optic nerve, and thus that causes the first visual relay to the brain. In the optic nerve, they carry nerve impulses to the optic chiasm. In the optic chiasm, the retinal axons switch sides to allow processing of the visual signals, and this is called detussation. Because visual information from the temporal side of the retina do not need to cross sides, the axons then proceed straight down the optic tract. The optic tract then travels down, the light then travels down from the optic tract into the lateral geniculate nucleus, which is in the dorsal part of the thalamus. Then the LGN, or the lateral geniculate nucleus, projects to the primary visual cortex through a process called optic radiation. The primary visual cortex is located in the occipital lobe, and the analysis of visual stimuli, in this case is light, continues through two major cortical systems for processing this visual information. The first is the ventral pathway, and that extends to the temporal lobe and is used for recognizing objects. And the second is the dorsal, which projects to the parietal lobe and is essential for locating objects, and that is how we view images. Next, we're going to be talking about audition. Audition is really how we hear sound. First, the sound goes through, the sound first enters through the pinna, and then from the pinna it goes through the ear canal. It funnels down to the ear canal, and then these sound waves of vibration causes movement to our eardrum over here, or the tympanic membrane, and then from there it's transferred into the three ossicles, which is connected to the tympanic membrane, and those are the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The sound vibrations travel from the malleus to the incus until it reaches the stapes and intensifies, and then it intensifies the energy of the sound until it's delivered into the oval window, which is around here. Inside the oval window, the sound waves transfer the fluid and then goes into the cochlea. The cochlea have hair fibers, and when the hair fibers vibrate, they cause the hair cells in the cochlea to move. The hair cells then protrude to the top of the organ of cortici, and on the side of the organ of cortici are the basal and tectorial membranes, which move up and down with the traveling of the sound waves. And then after that, the sounds then send electrical impulses to the auditory nerve or cranial nerve too. And now that the brain has received the sound, The audio data is delivered into the mediogenuclear nucleus, or the MGN, and then to the primary or auditory cortex, which is on the temporal lobe, and that is how we hear sound. Next, we have olfaction. Olfaction is basically our sense of smell. Okay, so basically, everything we breathe into is our little molecules, and these molecules enter into our nasal passageway, and they enter through our sinuses, and they bind to the binding site of cell A, which is our olfactory receptor cells. And then from there, they synapse into the mitral cells, which is in the olfactory bulb over here. And then the olfactory bulb axons, they all come together to form the cranial nerve 2 or the mitral cell axons. And finally, they synapse onto cell C, which is the olfactory cortex, which is a part of the limbic system. And really, that's how we sense smell. Next is my personal favorite. We have gustation. Gustation is stimulated by 5 different senses. The first sense is sucrose. The next one is, let's see right here, sodium chloride. The next one is hydrochloride. Then it's quinine, and then it's H2O. Alright, these stimuli start in the tongue. The tongue has little bumps on it called papilla. The papilla has within it taste buds, and then in the taste buds we have our taste receptors. And from the taste receptors, the taste receptors starts the transduction process of gustation. First, the stimulus has to be water soluble to be digested and broken down into liquid by our saliva. First, for us to taste it, and then it hits one of those combinations of receptors, and then that information is transmitted from the axons of the taste receptor cells to the facial nerve, which is a branch of cranial nerve 7. And from there, the taste nerves project onto the nucleus of the solitary tract, or the NTS, up here, in the medulla oblongata. And then from the NTS, they branch out into the pons, the thalamus, and the amygdala, and the ventral posterior nucleus of the thalamus, or the VPN. Finally, terminating into areas of the cerebral cortex. Finally, it reaches the primary taste cortex, and this is where our taste is perceived. First, taste is actually in the brain, it's not on the tongue, because taste has to do with the majority of our sensory experiences. It combines the odor of the stimuli, the feel of it, and then the taste to get the whole flavor experience, and that is how we taste. Last but not least, we have somatosensory. Somatosensory have multiple stimuli, but today we're just going to talk about touch and pain. The transduction starts with receptors. They start off with receptors. They start off with the receptors that are associated with types of stimuli in our free nerve, and those are the free nerve endings, the hair follicle receptors, the Meissner's corpuscles, the Paxillinian corpuscles, the Merkel discs, the Ruffini endings, and the cross end bulbs. These receptors are located in the skin and in the joints of the muscles. Stimulation of these receptors opens sodium channels in the axons and then starts the action potential. Okay, like I said, there are two different types of stimuli, and they both have different transmission pathways. The first transmission pathway um, is for touch. The somatosensory information for touch receptors are on the head. Enters the central nervous system through the cranial nerves, such as cranial nerve 5. The somatosensory information from receptors below the head into the spinal cord via the dermatomes. And the dermatomes are the areas of the skin supplied by nerve fibers from the single posterior spinal root. Okay, to start the transmission pathway for touch, it's carried into the spinal cord via the dorsal root, and then without synapsing, they ascend ipsilaterally in the dorsal part of the spinal cord to the dorsal column nuclei. Axons from the dorsal column nuclei desiccate in the medulla and ascend to the thalamus via the dorsal column medial lemniscus. Axons from the dorsal column medial lemniscus ascend to the thalamus, and then the fibers from cranial nerve 5 join the medial lemniscus and route to the thalamus. Most of the axons of the medial lemniscus synapse on neurons in the ventral posterior nucleus of the thalamus, or the VPN of the thalamus, however you want to say it. Axons from the VPN project to the primary somatosensory cortex, which is located on the postsensory gyri. The output of the primary somatosensory cortex is mostly projected to the secondary somatosensory cortex, which is located just inferior to the primary somatosensory cortex, and that is located in the ventral portion of the postsensory gyrus and is hidden by the lateral fissure. Lastly, the output from the secondary somatosensory cortex is sent to the posterior parietal association cortex, and the somatosensory cortex has a body map called the homunculus. The homunculus is just a part of the somatosensory cortex that has its own image of how the body looks based on the hormonoreceptors. Now, the transmission pathway for pain. The information crosses to the contralateral side of the spinal cord, and then the pathway is contained to the brain via the spinal thalamic tract. This is the axonal pathway that begins to the spine and ends in the thalamus. The tract then conveys pain and temperature and all of that to the primary sensory nerves, and that registers pain. And they have cell bodies that lie in the posterior dorsal root ganglion. The synapse in the posterior horn of the dorsal root in the spinal cord. They synapse into the posterior horn of the dorsal root in the spinal cord. And the secondary neurons cross the spinal cord contralaterally and ascend to the brain via the lateral spinal thalamic tract in a somatotopic arrangement. Secondary neurons synapse in the VPN of the thalamus. From the VPN of the thalamus, tertiary neurons ascend via the internal capsule to the primary sensory cortex. These cells also branch off axon collaterals to the limbic system, the hypothalamus, and other portions of the central nervous system, such as the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. These areas react not to sensation of pain, but to its emotional association, and that is the end of the sensory modality story. Thank you.